Welcome to the Equity Teacher Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rachael Mahmood. In this podcast, we'll dive into the stories, the voices, and the expertise of incredible teacher leaders who are making a difference through the equity work they do in their classrooms and their communities.
Welcome back to another episode of Equity Teacher Leader. I have a wonderful guest for us today, Dr. Mike Ayala. He is the 2023 Illinois Teacher of the Year Finalist for the Cook County regions. And then he's also the 2021 Foreign Language Teacher of the Year for the Illinois Council of Teaching on Foreign Language. Definitely a leader in this space. Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you very much. It's just really nice to be here. I work in Arlington Heights, John Hersey High School in District 214, and I teach Spanish. I've taught it all levels. Presently, I got the Spanish 1, and then I got the AP. So I got the two bookends, right? I've been teaching total for 34 years, but at Hersey, I've been teaching 31. So it's been a nice long career, and I just think it's something that I really like doing.
That's amazing, and just an inspiration to all of us. I'm 20 years in to see somebody that's, qualified probably for retirement now, but still wants to be there, still loves what they're doing. You definitely know the secret to that long, happy career. And we're going to pick apart some of that throughout this podcast. We're going to want to know all of your secrets, of course. So when I was growing up, I didn't experience any type of club. There wasn't even offered a club about my identity, right? There was clubs for sports and for arts and extracurricular talents and or interests. But this idea of identity clubs like the GSA or LGBTQ clubs or Asian American clubs or Latin American clubs, the Black Student Association, none of these things existed. Now we've really seen, in the last 20 years or so, or really in the last 10 years, that there has been this starting of these identity clubs. And so I want to ask you about your Latin American student organization that you started, because it was, get this, 32 years ago that you started this club. So you were like a pioneer in this space for sure. 32 years ago, I was 10. So when I went to high school, I did not have a club like that. So you were somewhere just down the street from me with a club that was based on identity. So tell us a little bit about how you got that started and what that club is all about.
Well, it all comes down to when, I came into the district and where I teach, it's predominantly white. And so I needed a place to fit in and everything. A lot of Hispanic students who were just going home, not being part of the school at all. And so I noticed that we needed to bring them together and give them an opportunity for them to see themselves, be able to share their culture, be part of a group, be part of the school. And so I created the program so they can feel like they can belong. And so it's just something that I think right now is really relevant in today's day and age. And back then, I didn't realize I was creating an affinity group, but that's exactly what it was. And so now we have a term for it. And so it's just cool that it was the first of its kind in my area. And our club, my student leaders went over to different clubs to be able to help them create new clubs at their school. So I think that in itself is pretty amazing, that they were invested in themselves to be able to share how important the club was for them.
That's amazing. And I definitely could see the benefit of having the kind of club. For me, I talk a lot about, as I'm traveling around the state, not feeling a sense of belonging when I grew up in schools, not seeing representations of myself, being the only one of my identity in so many spaces. And it would have been so incredibly special to have a safe space like that. And you're right, we do have a name for that now. Affinity groups, and they're all the rage. And if you don't know about affinity groups, we'll have to do another podcast on affinity groups. But generally, same idea. These identity clubs where kids can go to not only celebrate their culture, but also to find support amongst each other, have similar culture backgrounds. They can talk about what their struggles are. They can help each other overcome them. They can help them feel a sense of belonging. So lots of positive effects, you said, with your students. I think something that's interesting is those clubs, like the Latin America Student Club, the Black Student Association, Asian American Club. These are after school activities. And so many schools, they start with, let's build in culture after school. Let's have a multicultural affair. Let's have an after school club. Let's have some affinity spaces in those extra time after school. But those things are optional. Kids have to choose to stay for them. It's also kind of like sending a micro message to students, like, your culture is important, like after the school day, right? But what about the micro messages kids are getting during the school day? I heard that you started this Spanish for Heritage Learners curriculum, and I'm just so interested in hearing more about that. That's a way that we can get that culture into the classroom during the day, still creating kind of like that affinity space, right? Because these are all students who speak Spanish at home are now in a class together. Is that correct? Tell me what a Spanish for Heritage Learners curriculum is first.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, that was one of the things that got me into learning about who I was, so that when I came into the school system, like I went through a heritage program myself, and so I found myself at an early age. So I knew who I was, and I've always been proud of who I was. And so I know adults who are still struggling finding themselves, being able to say, I'm Latino, or I'm Black, or African American, whatever culture they are. They're having a hard time being able to say that and be able to say, I'm also American, and be part of the group without actually falling into the norms of the society system and what's set up right now. I mean, and so because of the heritage program that I was in, it was called the Spanish for Native Speaker program. And that's originally what I called it myself, because that's the program I used to take when I was in high school. So I constantly tell the kids, I was a student just like you. I was learning my language, getting the academic language, the writing, the reading, the speaking, all of that at the high school level. And I wanted them to have that experience as well, because one thing is to have that after school club and that opportunity to be able to socialize and get together and celebrate and bring in all their culture together. Another thing is to learn about it and to be part of it and to be able to say that I'm bilingual, right? Because you're not truly bilingual until you can read, write, and speak in both languages. And so the object of the heritage class was for them to find themselves, to become very much identified to their culture and be proud of who they were, and allow them to feel that pride in a group with students with similar backgrounds, for them to learn their language and to be able to learn how to speak more fluently without less fear. We have right now English classes for English speakers. Why not have a Spanish class for Spanish speakers? I mean, the way I tell people is that normally you would not put an English speaker into an EL program or a multilingual classroom because they have enough English, right? You wouldn't put them in that. Why would we do that to our Hispanic kids, our heritage learners, into a foreign language classroom? It's not foreign language to them. This is their language. They just haven't had the opportunity to take the classes and be ready to be taught in the manner that they should be taught. And I say they because the heritage learners are mostly Latinos, and they come from all parts of the Latin American country. Most of the students in my school are Mexican, but they're not all Mexican. And so what we try to do is try to give them information about their culture, their language, and giving them opportunities for them to identify, to showcase their talents, to be able to talk about their experience, to be able to give them a sense of pride and allow them to show off who they are in a classroom where they're all in the same boat. We have different levels, right? But, and I'll explain that later, but in my school, we chose to do, all of the freshmen go into Heritage 2, all of the sophomores go into Heritage 3, all of the juniors go into AP Language Heritage, and all the seniors go into Literature, AP Literature. And so we have 4 programs for the students to be able to get their Spanish and develop their skills and to learn about who they are and be proud of who they are.
So it sounds like there's multiple goals here. First of all, these are all students that already speak Spanish at home, are fluent maybe in conversational Spanish, talking with their families, things like that. You're giving them some of their academic language back, instruction in academic language, instruction in reading, in writing, so they can be fully bilingual in all senses of the word, right? With the reading, writing, and the academic speaking, correct?
Well, not all of them speak Spanish. Like there are students who were coming in with really broken Spanish, like really broken Spanish. But a class like this was way better than a foreign language classroom because they knew vocab. I mean, you give them a vocab in Spanish 1, they knew all those words. They knew all of the family members. They knew tío, tía, madre, padre, all of that. They just difficult time expressing themselves in Spanish. So here's the thing. We got students who are first generation, second generation, third generation. And the further away you get, the more difficult the language becomes for them, the home language, the Spanish in this case. We're dealing with a wide variety of levels. And so our goal, because I have other teachers who are teaching the heritage class with me, our goal is to be able to give them the opportunity to work through their language at their level. And so each one of them comes in at different levels in Spanish. And that's why it would be better to be able to put them into different levels. I don't have that luxury because we don't have that many Latino students. And so we deal with every single one of those students in their own way, differentiate, and make it available for them to learn.
Well, that's how it would be in any English class as well, right? I mean, we have all different kinds of levels of learners as well in our class, and they all learn from each other. But that makes sense. I mean, I come from a bilingual home, you can say, where people were always talking to me, or my husband is talking to my children in our home language, and they know a lot of vocabulary, but maybe aren't confident enough to string together sentences. That's how I feel about my Urdu. So I understand where, like, I could pass a vocab test, but making sentences, I'm not as confident. But listening, I can definitely discern what I'm being told to do or what we're talking about. So I understand that.
Wouldn't that have been great for you to have a class in Urdu at the high school level so that you had students who spoke Urdu be able to communicate with each other?
Exactly. And build the confidence. 100%.
Build that confidence. Be with people who are like them. Maybe even have similar situations with the parents because it's just an opportunity for them to share that. That's what we're building with this heritage class that we have. Like I said, we called native speaker. Now we call it heritage because the reality is these students are not native speakers. They're more heritage. They're learning their language and we're building on their knowledge.
I absolutely love that. So let's say somebody wanted to get something like this started in their school. They don't have a heritage speakers class. Maybe right now, students that are speaking any level of Spanish at home, or at least listening to Spanish at home, their family members speaking Spanish, they're just going into a regular foreign language, Spanish 1 class. What could they do to get something like this started? Or what are some elements that should be in the curriculum?
Well, the first thing is we are doing students like this a disservice if we don't have a program for them. So it is our duty as teachers to be able to bring this issue up with the principal, administration, or whoever needs to be able to explain the necessity of being a program like this. So the first thing is to show the need. Okay. Once you have that and they understand that there's a need, how do you create a program from scratch? Well, many times what happens is what you need to do is you need to fit the need of the students in your classroom. This is where the cultural relevance pedagogy comes into play, making sure that we hear their stories and allow them to tell their stories. And by doing that, we allow the students to be able to give a lot of what you need in the classroom to be able to be taught. So whether it's history or the grammar lessons are taught in context. They're all taught in context. So you learn grammar in context. I never use the box to say, here's the present tense, and you got to learn it this way, and with the pretérito, imperfecto, none of the future, none of that. They don't, subjuntivo, they don't know that. They don't really need to know that to communicate, right? You can use it. And actually, the heritage learners know how to use those very high-level, difficult grammar points without actually even being taught the grammar point. They know how to use subjuntivo, and they just need guidance as to how to do it. And the framing of the questions so you can get an answer from them in the tense that you want them to use. If I want them to use the past tense, talking about when they were kids, I just say, ¿qué hacías cuando estabas joven? O ¿cuáles eran los lugares que te gustaban conocer cuando eras niño? ¿Qué jugabas? Ask them the question and all of those questions are basically about their childhood. So I just, quickly, when you talk about childhood, you're going to use the imperfect tense. And so this is just one example, but having the lessons revolve around their needs of writing and reading. Reading is a huge one. Bringing in reading. So the first thing is get the need at the administrators to know how much a need there is for a program. Second is to get the reading and give them material for them to read. Like I use sustained silent reading for 10 minutes. I went ahead and got money for grants to get them books so that they can read in Spanish and get them exposed to reading, because that builds vocabulary, builds confidence and all that. So second thing is to get some reading into that, making sure that the students get a chance to write about their stories, write about who they are, give them information and allow them to learn from their parents. So giving part of the curriculum I have is where they interview their parents and they give an opportunity to find out the story of their parents and how, whether if they came to the United States as immigrants or their grandparents, or find out the story of their origin and where they come from, where their parents are from, and give them that opportunity, which they normally don't have an opportunity to share. So allowing them to give them that space is important. And so building that into the class, I think those are things that would help create the program, because it's very different the way you teach an English class and a multi-language class. You can't teach it the same way. And same thing with the foreign language class, with the heritage class. It's just very different. The heritage class is more like an English class. The foreign language class is closer to the multi-language class. So there is a need. And every school should have one for students who speak Spanish at home. And that's important for them to be able to have that avenue.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a great distinction for people to understand the difference between a foreign language class and a heritage class. I think that those are some great steps that you had shared for getting the curriculum started. Establish the need, right? Go to your administration and explain to them the difference between a foreign language class and a heritage class, and why it's going to benefit our students that are native language speakers. Then two, how do we center reading? Some of those literacy skills may not be up to par, but they provide the framework, just like in a literature class. In a regular English class, you would do that. We would ground everything in a story or in reading. And then not only what are they reading, but also how are they writing their stories? And then understanding that in these heritage classes, we don't teach them the same way we teach a foreign language class, where foreign language is language heavy. The students have a variety of language skills throughout their years of speaking or being immersed in their native languages. So, they have maybe some of those skills there in pockets. So it's more about like refining those skills and having them use them in context and build their confidence while also building their identity. Did I get that? Did I catch up?
That is correct, because you did. And honestly, it's crazy how you can see that in there. And because all of a sudden a light bulb goes on and like, I remember hearing that word once. And they come up with some words that a non-heritage language speaker who's been taking 4 years of Spanish doesn't even have any clue like how to come up with a word like that, because they heard it from their grandmother or they heard it from. And so it's not about us trying to correct their Spanish, because honestly, that's not our job. Our job is to teach them how to use what they know. And so we're coming from an asset base as opposed to a deficit. And so we're taking what they know and building upon that. And once again, it's like looking at a student with asset, not deficiencies. And so my heritage learners, they have assets. They have, and I tell them, you guys have a talent that people pay a lot of money for to get. And you guys got it from your parents. And so you got to go home and thank them, because these are the conversations we have. Of course, we do it in Spanish. And of course, this is the kind of thing that we do in the heritage class to make them feel good. So they understand, you're right. I should be proud. And yeah, it's okay if I have an accent. And yes, I did come, or my parents came from another country. Like this is quite all right. And especially in today's day and age and what's happening, the students need a place to be able to feel safe. And this is what we build in these heritage classes, these places of safety, the sense of belonging. It's all about equity. So the equity that we're talking about is giving them an opportunity for them to learn their language. And it's not the same having a class in the foreign language classroom.
I love with the asset-based, framework or lens that like their parents are also an asset. I think a lot of times there's a lot of deficit language around parents who are not native English speakers. And, can they support their kids with homework, or they may not have the education level to support their children. And with the students and the curriculum centering going back and talking to their parents as experts, as people who are passing on knowledge and stories and language to their children, that's really powerful for me. I absolutely love that. That has to be in the curriculum too, that idea of honoring the family and passing it on. You mentioned it. I'm just re-mentioning it because I forgot it in my summary. But
no, that's good because it's important to include that. It's part of the curriculum. It's part of what I created with what I learned from my years taking those classes, what I've seen from other programs. And this is what I bring into my heritage program. And our heritage program is very strong. We have students coming in that don't speak it very fluently at all, cannot even form a full sentence in Spanish, taking the AP test and getting at least a 3 or higher at AP test. And
that's the student success right there.
Just with that right there, you have it, and
love that.
See the kids see themselves reflected in myself and the other 2 teachers that I work with who are also Mexican. They see 3 professionals who were sitting in the same seats as they were. That opens up so many possibilities. They see themselves. They're like, oh, Dr. Ayala, I can be a doctor too someday. Yes, you can. It's amazing for them to see those things and to have those opportunities. Unbelievable. I mean, how many times can you say, when was the last time you had a teacher that looked like you, teaching you? Like, and for our kids?
Me, never.
You never had one? You never had a teacher like that at high school, huh?
No, I'm half Russian Jewish, half Indian Hindu. So just even having those 2 identities together is so rare. But I've never had a Jewish teacher and I've never had an Indian Hindu teacher. So no. And my children, I'm married to a Pakistani Muslim who speaks Urdu, and, they don't also have any of those teachers as well. So so
you can relate to the reasoning for having a program like this.
Absolutely.
To have success.
And I was just thinking about too, like, let's broaden this, this idea, right? So there are these programs in place for Spanish speaking students, but let's say we have a big population of another language. Like, how can we broaden our programs to include these languages that we have in our schools? If we have a lot of students speaking Russian, should we have a Russian for heritage speakers course? If we have a lot of students that are speaking Urdu, should we have that course, or Arabic? I mean, every student deserves to fully develop their bilingualism and their identity at school. And if we have a large group of students who are speaking a similar language, who have these pieces at home, we absolutely should be trying to create these experiences for them. And we can learn from our Spanish speaking educators who have created these programs ahead of us and how they have helped their students. Like, the people from my identity can do the same. We can follow in your footsteps and advocate for that. But I'm thinking, I teach elementary school. We have a bilingual program for Spanish. But aside from that, I have students who speak Arabic, Pashto, Urdu, Telugu, Russian, Ukrainian. They're all in my class too, right? And now when you only have 1 of each or 2 of each students, it's hard to develop like a whole program. But I think we can use the same principles of your curriculum within our English curriculum and do a lot of the same things, even at the elementary level, even at the middle school level. And even if you are in a foreign language class and you don't have the native heritage class, but you're a foreign language teacher and you have heritage speakers in your class, you can use these same principles, right? We can still build in those reading opportunities for them to see stories, to hear stories. I mean, today we have computers. Every kid has a Chromebook. How easy it is to put on your headphones and listen to a story in your language, right?
Yep.
We can still encourage students to write in their language or to write about their language or about their experiences, even if they're doing it in English because they don't have the writing skills to do it in their native language. We can still ask them to talk to their parents and share those stories in their native language. We can still give opportunities to bring those stories to the classroom. So we can build these elements of the heritage class into our classrooms for all the richness, all the diverse languages that our students have, even if we can't just get a specific class for them. So you really shared some excellent strategies with us today of how we can hopefully start a class. But if we can't start a class, how we can just gain some wisdom from those classes and weave it through, what we do have. Any other final pieces of wisdom that you want to share with us about the heritage class or about honoring students' native languages?
The thing is, it is so important for us to value every language, and every person deserves to be seen. And I think that when you create a class like this, or for example, like you were saying, in a class where a variety of students who speak different languages, to give them a space for them to share their story, you're doing a service that is going to pay back full 10 times, 100 times over, because you're giving that student a place to feel like they belong. Creating a safe spot for them is important. And we need to understand that if a student wants to learn, students want to learn. If we want to give them a space to learn, we have to make it safe for them. We need to make it inviting. We need to make sure that they feel like they're cared for. And all of us can do that. As educators, we can all do that in every single one of our classrooms. And so we don't have to have a heritage class for that. But the heritage language classes, for whatever language like you said, it could be for any language. Okay. It's meant for those students that have a place to be able to use their language that was given to them by their parents. And so they're bringing all this history and all this answer.
Gifted. I'm gonna prove their parents gifted this language. And, I see now my husband is bilingual, and I see how much love and effort he puts in every single day to gift our children the language of his culture. He is always talking to them in Urdu. He wants them to understand it. It's not just about them feeling connected to him, but it's about them feeling connected to their grandparents, to their cousins, to their country. And it is a gift that your parents give you when they give you your home language. And I think, you hit the nail on the head when we're saying, we're trying to help students to see this as an asset and as wisdom that they carry. This is familial wisdom that they carry with them that absolutely enhances who they are. It does not take away from their identity or their intelligence, as years of education has mistold students that their language, their home languages take away from intelligence. It absolutely does not. It enhances their intelligence.
It enhances, and not only that, it's something that creates a better environment for the whole school. It's like we're not, and the heritage banking, we're not taking away from anything. We're literally giving back. And so once again, asset based, and we're using that as a way to improve the student's gift. And so it is something that should be created. And like I said, we're doing a disservice if we don't have these programs and we put students in foreign language classrooms. Those are not the classes for these students.
I love that. No, thank you so much for sharing that. All right. I ask every single teacher that comes on here, teacher leader that comes on here, if you could create a student success playlist, it could be a song, a quote, a story, something that motivates you to keep on teaching, which you are a wealth of knowledge because you've been keeping on teaching for 34 years, you said. So whatever quote it is, whatever story it is, whatever song it is, we want to know it because we want to make it to 34 years of happily ever after in the classroom. What motivates you? What keeps you going? Give us some of your knowledge. Share it on us.
You know what? I think it's very important for us to remember that all of us are here on this earth for a reason, and we need to show love, care, and respect to everyone. And if we do that, we get it back. So one of the quotes that's one of my favorites is from Benito Juárez, of course, one of the presidents from Mexico. And it goes like this: Entre los individuos, como entre las naciones, el respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz. And in English, it goes to, among individuals as among nations, respect for the rights of others is peace. And I think now, in this time and age, right now, we need to understand that if we respect others, we're creating that peace, and we need to respect others. It's not what happens to you, but it's how you react to it that makes the difference. And I think by sharing that love, it spreads. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to stay in so long and be able to remember that I'm here for a reason, and I am meant to share that love. And that's what I'm doing.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your love. I mean, the way that you center students' identities, the asset-based lens that you see them through, these programs and initiatives that you started 30 years ago that are still running strong, creating curriculum that reflects the identities of students, the way you advocate for them, the love you bring every day to the classroom. There is no doubt in my mind you are an equity teacher leader. Remember, you don't need a fancy title or fancy position to be an equity teacher leader. You just need to lead with heart in the classroom, view your students through those positive lenses, make space for their stories, advocate for them, help make our educational system a more inclusive space where every student feels belonging. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. It's been an honor to speak with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on your podcast. Thank you.